Hi, and welcome to episode 92 of the Breaking Bio podcast. I'm Morgan Jackson, a PhD student at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada.
Hi, I'm Heidi Parker. I'm a postdoc at the University of Texas at Austin.
Hi, I'm Tom Housley, and I'm a postdoc at the University of Exeter in Penryn.
And Alt-October is still going strong here. We're getting up to the end of the month by the time you listen to this, but we're still early in the month as of now. But this week we're being joined by Dr. Stephanie Kadison, who is a science educator at Bard High School Early College, Queens. Thanks for joining us this week, Stephanie, and can you tell everybody at home a little bit about what you do?
All right, so I actually teach at a really interesting model for a high school. So it is, as you could tell by the name, it's an early college. So I have the unique opportunity to be both a high school teacher and a college teacher at the same time. So I teach the typical high school biology course, but in addition, in the third and fourth years, students have opportunities to take college-level courses. And I do have a PhD in neuroscience, and so I'm able to teach Introduction to Neurobiology, which is really awesome.
So, Steph, we've talked to a lot of people who've been on the show about, the science pipeline and this idea of a leaky pipeline. And so I've asked a lot of people, can you tell us a little bit about your path on that pipeline and when you left and why?
So I have a pretty unusual trajectory, and I'm sure that's how every one of your guests have started off their story. But I started off a typical PhD track. I completed my PhD at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx in developmental neurobiology. I'm completely obsessed with neuroscience. I actually majored in neuroscience for my undergrad when it first became a major in the United States. That's kind of dating myself, but anyway. So I guess I was in it to win it. But basically, I did my PhD in neuroscience, and then I wanted to do a postdoc to see if I wanted to maybe start my own lab or go into industry. I wasn't quite sure, but I was pretty sure I was going to become a PI. Just like me, my beloved advisor, my PhD advisor, Zavin Kaprelian, it's a shout out. I love that Armenian man. He's amazing.
He's a fantastic human being.
He is the greatest mentor ever. I mention him whenever possible. But anyway, he was very inspiring, and I was hoping to someday emulate his amazing scientific prowess. But my postdoc, I did a postdoc that didn't work out the way that I thought it would, and I did a second postdoc to sort of give myself another perspective and see if I wanted to stay in science. And at the same time, I was part of this really interesting after-school mentorship program that the New York Academy of Science had just been starting. And I was in the very first cohort. Their model was that they were taking scientists that were either PhDs or postdocs in the New York area and bringing them into underserved 4th through 8th grade classrooms. And I had never taught before. Maybe I taught a graduate course or something, but this was one of my first experiences in a classroom of children, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I was trained, really well trained. I was given a genetics curriculum through the New York Academy of Science and various other courses that they offered, and sort of thrown into these amazing classrooms that were in places as diverse as East New York and Crown Heights, and just amazing middle school aged children, which you don't always hear in the same sentence, but these kids were spectacular, and they were life-changing. And I knew pretty much after the first or second class that I taught that this was what I wanted to do. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I, first of all, for the first time, probably was like, whoa, I am really good at this, and this feels right to me, and it was gratifying, which, as scientists, you guys all know that's a very rare thing to feel instant gratification for anything, because science is a world of pain and rejection for the most part, and once in a while you get a paper, you get credited by someone or some recognition, but with teaching, it's this constant positive feedback. It's not always positive. Okay, you definitely get bad days, there's negative feedback sometimes, but it's this amazing thing where you actually feel like you're making an impact, and not an impact that may impact futures populations, but actually this current generation. So it's this amazing experience that was literally life-changing. People overuse that term. This was a life-changing experience. So after this mentorship program, I was like, I'm out. In my second postdoc, I told my PI, I quit. I did not have a job. This is not, by the way, a recommendation for a life path. It's not a suggestion I would make to most people. But I was like, I'm done. I do love science. I love the excitement of being at the bench and discovering every day and having new things fail. And some succeed. But I was pretty much at that point in love with teaching, and I knew that I could not turn back. So this was sort of the beginning of a new career, and it was pretty scary because I wasn't certified. I had no master's in education. I wasn't quite sure where or who would let me teach their children. But in New York, you can teach at private schools. And I'm sorry, I'm probably jumping ahead to questions you have, but there's certain places, there's certain schools.
Go ahead.
Okay, there's certain schools where you can teach even if you have never taken an education class in your life. Again, not a suggestion I'm giving anyone, but I've had to learn on the job. It's been a learning curve in some cases, but if your heart's in it, if your passion is there, I think teaching is pretty much the best job in the world. Science is pretty awesome too. I'm not going to knock science, especially not in your podcast, because I loved being a scientist. I loved my time there. I don't deny that part of me, and I bring it up a lot, actually, and I bring it into my teaching all the time. And I think it actually offers a much richer experience for the classroom to have that background. And you have a much more real life and realistic view of what science careers look like too, and you can give more feedback to students that are interested in going along that track perhaps in the future. But I think I've spoken too long, so I'm going to
No, it's fine.
turn it over to you.
I've met one of the kids from your class who ended up working at Columbia in a lab, who worked with my husband. And those kids are so in it. You know, they want to go into science, they want to go to med school, they know these things. And it's such a unique opportunity because they're just like these little sponges that can't wait to learn all these things. But do you just teach book stuff with them, or do you do labs and other things?
So I do have, actually my neuroscience class is not a lab class. We do dissect a sheep brain. I do borrow brains from Columbia and take them on the subway.
We've heard about this. You told me you want to go on the subway.
Yeah, I've never gotten searched, thank goodness, because I don't know how to explain that I have human brains in my bag. But every semester I trek to Columbia and I get the brain bank that they have. Yeah, and so it's a really great experience for the students. So it's not actually a lab course, but I do have those components. I'm trying to take them to outside lectures because we're in New York. There's so many amazing opportunities for that. My biolab is a lab course, and it's the typical labs that you would have in high school.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've seen some of your students also at other different talks. It's really cute because they're like talks that I would go across town to Rockefeller to go to, and then there's like a high school kid. Like, this must be so weird for them.
They love it.
They're really into it. But do you ever just think of yourself as a scientist who's teaching them? Right? Because you're still a scientist.
All the time. I don't identify completely as a teacher ever, because I think being a scientist is sort of like being an artist. It's part of who you are. It's not just a job that you have, and so it's something that I don't think will ever change about who I am and the way that I think, because I'm very skeptical, I'm very critical and analytical in the way that I do everything, and I think that comes from my extensive background and my PhD and all that training for years.
So have you had to get other training? Like, you don't have a master. Do you have a master's in education? I don't know this.
Sort of. I should probably say that. Sort of. It's not. So I do have I am certified now. I have a professional certification. I'm a professional, and I have a master's from Bard College, which is associated with the high school. So I did take courses in pedagogy, which means the art of teaching, and yeah. So I'm certified to teach in New York City, New York State, New York City. I don't know.
It might be both. It might be both. So,
yeah.
How has it been? Has it just been like you find fulfillment in this, never looking back, or do you ever think about the what ifs?
I wonder if. I mean, I never questioned being a teacher, because I would never want a different job. But I wonder if maybe during a summer or two I would work in someone's lab at the bench just for fun, or just to make sure that I'm updated, or have more contact with the scientific community or go to a conference and maybe take a different approach. I just discovered there's a journal called the Journal of Undergraduate Neuroscience Research, and so that seems pretty cool that I could even think about publishing, even as a teacher, because I haven't published in a while since, forever. So in a different realm. So I don't know. There's different things that I think about, but it always centers around teaching still, and I have no regrets.
There are people at SFN that have teaching modules.
Right. No, that's exactly what I mean. Like because I don't think it's usual for people to have high school age kids that are doing neuroscience. So I could either market it as an education module or curriculum for college or high school, because they are high school age kids. So it's still a similar audience as high school. They're just pretty accelerated.
As somebody who's coming from this from the Canadian perspective, so we perhaps don't have as much private schooling, which I assume that this is under the realm of a private school? No.
It's actually a New York City public school. It's completely free, and the students get their associates. So they get up to 60 credits, college credits. It depends on the school that they transfer into. If they go to another college, how many are accepted. But some students, if they go to a city or state school, they're done in 2 years after they go through Bard High School or the college.
But it's a really competitive school to get into, right?
It's pretty competitive. There are a few of them. There are a few other Bard-associated schools. There's one in Newark, one in Manhattan, one opened in Baltimore, there's one in Cleveland. They're sort of, it's a new model. I think even Obama has referenced it as a potential new model for high schools, as this idea of having high school and then early college courses, so that some of college is so financially burdensome that it's a really nice option for lots of students.
Okay, cool. So this is more like a college accelerator, perhaps, than a typical high school.
It's definitely.
Which is pretty cool. See, I'm learning all sorts of stuff today. But I think the model of having students getting this acceleration, like you're saying, of having the high school experience and their class selection, and I assume a fairly broad range of classes offering them, but then able to focus really finely in on say, neurobiology or neuroscience in their later years, is going to be a pretty unusual experience for them. Well, they may not think it's unusual, but I suspect that a lot of us who didn't have that experience are looking back at it as a little unusual. And us all knowing that high school is, how to put this succinctly, perhaps not the greatest time for major life decisions and or thinking for the future. How do you find the students take to this opportunity to take super specific things that perhaps they wouldn't have had a lot of exposure to prior?
I think that some of the major focuses are critical thinking and writing, and thinking in a way that's not too narrow. So we have tracks, so majors, if you want to call them that, if you could finish a major in 2 years. So there's a biology tract and there's a chemistry tract, but I think a lot of students, they try and take a wide range of classes. It, of course, depends on the students. There are students that will just take the classes that they think the easy teachers are teaching, but then there are students that will take classes that they're specifically thinking about majoring in when they go to their next college, or just ones that they want to try, and then maybe they'll do something totally different in their next college. So it depends on the student, actually. But a lot of students, once they realize they love science, they really do take a lot of science courses. We even have organic chemistry, which is very popular, because that's a course you don't often get to take in a classroom of 24 other people. It's usually hundreds. So it's a great opportunity.
That would have been so helpful, you know, to go home, like being like 16 and taking organic chemistry at home, and like going home and your mom makes you dinner while you study for a test, and you're not like trying to work and do everything else. That's amazing. So how long have you been teaching there?
So this will be the beginning of my 5th year, believe it or not. So
have you tracked any of those kids that you've had in things? Are any of them majoring in neuroscience?
A lot of them, actually. I don't take credit for that because I think neuroscience is a very sexy field in and of itself. I don't need to sell it. It's naturally just kids are drawn to it because it's the brain and it's really cool. I mean, that's what drew me to neuroscience when I was in high school and decided I was going to major in it and then spend the rest of my life being in it. so a lot of them major, not all of them end up doing graduate school, but I do have a student, actually one of my students who placed second in this national contest where she wrote a grant, a neuro grant. That's one of the that's one of the projects that you do in my course, is you write a full-length grant. So she actually adopted it for this contest and won second place, and I wrote her letters, and she's gotten into all these competitive summer programs, and she's continuing to major in neuroscience. So that's really exciting that there are students that continue in neuro or even in the sciences in general and don't just do a pre-med track, and that think about actually working at the bench. So,
that's really cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's awesome.
It's pretty nice to have a success story or a full suite of success stories like that. As, you know,
I mean,
my
students are so great that I can't take credit for this. I definitely try and do as much as I can in terms of helping students be able to work on their scientific literacy in terms of writing and reading, because I have my students try and break down like primary literature, which is pretty hard when you're 17. I don't think I did that appropriately until I was in grad school, but so I push them a lot. But it's also the students are so amazing and self-motivated and really driven. So that's part of it. I can't
That's really
take full
cool.
credit.
Well, you should take some credit because I think it's still pretty awesome. So this is, I don't know, maybe people that are on the outside looking in. New York is kind of its own little ball of opportunities, and because there's just a critical mass of outside opportunities. We were talking before the show started about your students going to talks and
Mm-hmm.
major college level talks, professors giving public speaking and stuff like that. Do you think that there's room for bringing some of the things that you've learned in your classroom to a broader audience, to students that have maybe not as many in-class or in-institution opportunities in smaller towns, perhaps, or less specified programs?
So you're saying, should I have like a traveling?
a traveling neuro show if you want. I mean, that's totally cool.
I would love to segue into this. So I'm always trying to get Steph to use Twitter, right? Not for yourself, but in your classroom. So they do this all the time where it's like, ask a scientist, and you can hashtag these things. Neuroscience has never really caught on to this. As like technology fueled as, the subject area is, you do know that, on Fridays in your classrooms, you could have a hashtag, ask a neuroscientist, and I'm pretty sure you could get some pretty big deal neuroscience PIs in New York City to answer these questions from high school kids. And that would be amazing, and that's something that would work everywhere.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, I think I'm the only person in my classroom that doesn't use Twitter. We do use an online interactive classroom website called Edmodo that looks like Facebook, and so that's a way that I send them articles and links and things to keep them engaged outside of the classroom and let them know about talks and stuff. But
social media is really useful for science, especially for kids who are trying to learn things.
No, I think that's great. I think that's something that I need to do now. You'll teach me.
Yeah. It's easy to use Twitter, and all the kids already know how to do it.
Right, they do. They prefer Snapchat. I'm up on these things because I'm a high school teacher, but Twitter it's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine like Eric Kandel and Tom Jessel on Snapchat, right?
I can, but it would be.
But I can imagine people in like the big neuro labs, in New York, letting someone in their lab go ahead and do these tweets. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Did you ever along the way think about teaching?
No.
You have never figured this out, because a lot of grad students, right? My program is one of the only ones at Columbia where you had to TA, right? But nobody else TAs. And so no one ever gets exposed to this. So you'd have never figured this out.
If it wasn't for the New York Academy of Sciences. No, it's true. If they didn't have this mentorship, it's an amazing program. I encourage anyone who's in the New York area to become part of it, because it's awesome.
Yeah, but that's amazing. What do you think you would have done had you not been a teacher?
I would have had a 12-year postdoc. No, I don't know. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, it can be hard to figure out the future when you're not sure where you wanted it to go, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Well, I think
really
for the students, it's
incredible.
obviously worked out pretty good. So, what do you think the importance of having somebody who's walked the walk and talked the talk in a real world example, being up at the front of the room and helping them through just not just the introduction to these things or a one-off lecture, which is still super valuable, but is showing them, how it can be done or how it was done or is done.
I think I'm not sure I'm showing them how it should be done, but I think having sort of someone who is a role model or someone that represents something that they might want to do in their future is really helpful for kids, because if they don't ever have an idea of what they want to become, if they have no image for that in their minds, it's hard to imagine ever becoming that person. Like if there's, I don't know, especially girls that have this unfortunate issue of thinking they're bad at science or math, but it's really powerful to have a female math or science teacher. I know it sounds very trivial, but it's actually really can be very powerful. And I don't know, just
No, I think that's huge. It's something
Yeah.
that, like, being a scientist is something that's really commonplace, right? We learn about this at school. It's like one of these jobs. But you know someone when you're a kid, like, that guy's a fireman, that guy's a policeman, her mom's a nurse, that person's a doctor. I didn't know any scientists growing up. I will say my high school bio teacher, he, like, did a year at some kind of industry place, and that gave him huge street cred for me, because that was the only person I knew that had ever had a job in science.
But you
I-
remember that.
Yeah, of course, Andrew Holmgren. He was amazing. He also threw a scalpel at one of my friends, but yeah, street cred for days. I think it could have been a scalpel handle, but he was known for throwing things.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a big thing for kids to see, like, you're a person, you're a scientist. This is what it means to be that, and especially for girls.
Right, and I'm someone who's pretty accessible, and students are very comfortable talking to me, so I'm not this idea of someone in a white coat with really frizzy, crazy hair like Albert Einstein that, is much older. And I mean, I'm not a spring chicken, but the students can relate to me and talk to me about things and ask questions about, what's like being a scientist, or I don't know. They don't feel threatened or anything, which I don't know. Most scientists I know.
All these studies where you go and ask a group of kids, right, like elementary school kids, to draw a scientist, and it's an old white man. I don't know what high school kids would imagine a scientist is like, but I'm sure the kids in your class.
I know what my kids would draw. They would draw pictures of all their teachers, because all the teachers at my school have PhDs, and so we have every single bio and chem teacher is a scientist and has a doctorate.
That's amazing.
Wow.
You guys should have, like, an after-hours lab.
If we had time, if we didn't have so much grading and all the other teacherly work. So I will say, anyone thinking about going from postdoc into teaching is actually more work if you do it right. If you don't, it's not that much work. But the grading, the actual paying attention, parent connection, it's so much, and there's a lot of pieces to the moving picture that you don't expect. But it's very rewarding. That's the thing that I'll just always go back to, no matter how much work or how bad a lesson goes. There's always that random student that, like, sees you in the hall, like, "Hi, Dr. K, I can't wait to see Richard Axel's talk." And I'm like, "Okay, that's cool. I'm glad you remember his name." But I don't know. It's pretty much why I get out of bed in the morning.
That's a pretty reassuring thing to have happen, I suspect.
That's
Yeah.
great.
It's pretty cool.
Do you remember having great teachers when you were at Brandeis or Einstein? Zavin is a great teacher.
Right. So I always go back to my PhD advisor. He is amazing and inspiring. Actually, at Brandeis, there's someone who I actually referenced in my my thesis, Eve Martyr, who is probably my neuroscience hero, and she's super famous. You can look her up. She's a genius. And she taught me into a neuro class, which was a lot of students. Mostly graduate students. It was very intimidating, but she was, I don't know, such an impactful speaker and teacher. She definitely left a really lasting impact on me. I can't say exactly why. Maybe it's because she sat down with me for 2 hours and went through a list of graduate schools that I could apply to, and she took all this time with me and acted as a true mentor. And so I think that's something that really I always wanted to give back to other students if I could. So Yeah.
She's also one of the greatest female neuroscientists, right?
I mean, there is that.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's incredible.
Yeah. She's a lot of people's hero. But yeah. So maybe you'll be that to some of your students.
I mean, I'm not even going to pretend that I'm in that category, but I hope that some students, I don't know, get excited about science, even if that's not what they end up doing. That's awesome. Or if they understand how a neuron works after my class, that's cool too.
So now that outreach has become your job, do you still do other types of outreach?
Not as much as I'd like to. I am actually doing something at the Intrepid Museum for something called Goals. I can't tell you what it stands for at this moment, but it has something to do with getting girls excited about science. So I'm doing something there as like an informal science education activity. And I always try and check out things that are available, but my time is more limited than probably it was even when I was a scientist, so it's pretty hard to keep up with that stuff. But I love outreach, and I like taking students on field trips. So we just went to Rockefeller with my neuroscience class, and it was amazing. It was really fun. And those types of trips and being in another lab reminds me of how much, science rocks.
That's awesome. Are you doing the Brain Bee this year?
Every year.
Sorry, what's the Brain Bee?
It's actually it's an international contest based on trivia just around anything about the brain. It's limited to these 2 booklets that are given out by the Dana Foundation, and there's a regional one in New York City. And the last 3 years, we've actually, one of our students has gotten 3rd or 4th place, which I guess Heidi wanted me to brag about. What I'm more excited about is there's also this Design a Brain contest, which students basically write a grant about a novel research question that they have, and our students have placed the last 2 years in that, and that's national. And that's a really cool opportunity to actually use something they have as a project in our class already, and then apply it towards this contest, and then feel really cool that they're the smartest in the country.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like essentially the script spelling bee, but for neuroscience, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The Dana Foundation came up with it, and I think it's really exciting to have contests and these things that that students, I don't know, they feel like, well, they actually do win money in some cases, and sometimes the money comes to the school, which is cool for us. But it's that recognition, I think. They get really excited, and they're already competitive students, so it's fun for them to have a goal. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess we're pretty much out of time. But what we've been doing throughout this Alt-October thing is talking to people like yourself who've gone out of academia and found fulfilling careers that they really love, doing something that perhaps they hadn't thought of. And we've been asking them whether they have a piece or two of advice for those that are still working in the lab at the bench, looking at a career in academia, on how to get out or what things they could be doing to prepare for a career outside of academia. So do you have some advice that you could share with anybody that may be listening?
So I'm again going to promote the New York Academy of Sciences. It's a really great way to network and go to different workshops that explore things outside of the bench that you can do as a scientist. I recommend to anyone to do the after-school mentorship program if you have the time and if your PI allows you to leave the bench for that many hours a week. I just think also it's good to keep an open mind because you never know which opportunities will come your way, because I had no idea I would be sitting where I am today, which is actually at my desk in the school that I'm teaching. So like literally where I'm sitting. I would never have seen myself here 6 years ago, even 10 years ago. So just keep an open mind, and I think that's all I have to say.
No, I think that's great. Always good advice. So you've already said that you're not so much on the social media, but is there anywhere that people can follow along with you and with the various work that you're doing, the Brain Bee, or not so much? No? Okay.
But we're going to get you on Twitter. We're going to come up with a Twitter handle.
Yeah, I guess I keep a low profile, but maybe Heidi will pull me out of that.
Yeah, we're going to do this with your class. I'm really into it.
Okay.
I'm inspired by Breaking Bio, and we're going to go for it.
All right. So when that happens, we'll be sure to tweet all that info out once it happens. We'll tweet that out on our Twitter, which is, of course, @BreakingBio. And if anybody's listening at home and wants to find out more about some of the things that Stephanie has been talking about today, whether it's the Brain Bee or the Goals program or the New York Academy of Sciences mentoring programs, we'll have links to all those things on our website at breakingbio.com. And then if you have questions or concerns or anything else, you can always leave us comments at Facebook by searching for the Breaking Bio podcast, and you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher as well. Again, Breaking Bio. It's there and everywhere. I hope everybody's been enjoying Alt October. We're just about done for the month, but we want to hear your stories as well, so make sure you drop us a line on Twitter or Facebook using the hashtag AltOctober, and we'll see what kind of discussion we can have. As always, we need to thank the European Society for Evolutionary Biology for making sure that we can get all this information back to you through the internet. And I hope you'll join us next week when we round off Alt October with our final guest, and then we'll get back to the regular academic stream, I suppose. But I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks again to Stephanie, and join us all next week.